They didn't evolve, they adapted. Over the last 5 years, researchers across the globe began reporting strange animal behaviors, pack hunting in species that were once solitary, migratory changes that defied instinct, attacks with patterns too intelligent to be called random, and then, something even more disturbing, coordinated responses. As if the wild was no longer just reacting to humanity, but actively resisting it. Not through apocalyptic storms or rising seas, but through biology, behavior, evolution. This isn't science fiction. It's peer-reviewed. It's happening now. What if nature is no longer just surviving us, but fighting back? What if we push too far? You're about to hear what we were never supposed to notice. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. For decades, humanity believed it stood at the top of nature's hierarchy, controlling, classifying, and, when needed, correcting the wild. We track weather with satellites, monitor extinction with databases, and develop technologies to neutralize everything from forest fires to pandemics. The Anthropocene, as scientists call it, is the era in which human influence defines the planet, not nature. But what if that assumption was wrong? Today, global science operates under the belief that animals act primarily on instinct, emotion, and survival. Their behaviors, though sometimes surprising, are considered predictable within evolutionary models. But starting around 2017, isolated anomalies began to surface. Elephant herds in Botswana altering migration routes away from poaching zones without direct encounters. Wolves in northern Canada coordinating flanking maneuvers against armed rangers. Even more subtle, urban birds changing their vocal frequencies to jam specific monitoring devices. At first, these events were dismissed as coincidence. Then, patterns emerged. Multiple regions, different species, unconnected ecosystems. Yet the behaviors were strikingly aligned. Avoidance, defense, misdirection, aggression, but not random. Scientists began asking a question that made many of their peers uncomfortable. Could collective behavior shift fast enough, intelligently enough, to indicate something more than adaptation? Could this be the first stage of a new ecological response? One not born from instinct, but intention? A response not to climate, but to us? On paper, everything still looks normal. The data, the models, the forecasts, they all say we're in control. But for those who are watching closely, for the researchers brave enough to connect the dots, something is changing. And it's not waiting for permission. It began with silence. In 2019, a research team deep in the Congo Basin reported something strange. For over 2 weeks, the jungle had gone quiet. No birdsong at dawn. No insect swarms at dusk. Predators, prey, even scavengers, missing. Initially blamed on poaching activity, the explanation didn't hold. There were no traps. No bodies. Just absence. The silence was total. Then came the footage. In the same region, motion-triggered cameras captured a group of lowland gorillas performing something deeply unsettling: systematic dismantling of hidden recording equipment. Not smashing it in panic, but removing lenses, damaging memory cards, disabling power sources. Slowly. Precisely. At first, no one wanted to publish the findings. It sounded ridiculous. Gorillas don't do that. But then similar reports surfaced in the Amazon, northern Australia, and parts of Alaska. Apex species, jaguars, wild dogs, even orcas, acting not just with coordination, but with awareness. Avoiding observation. Evading drones. Attacking only when blind spots were confirmed. By 2021, a scattered group of field biologists started connecting the dots. They called it behavioral divergence acceleration, a theoretical threshold where animal cognition might adapt more quickly than expected due to environmental pressure. But even they admitted, this was faster than theory allowed. Not evolution in the slow, Darwinian sense. Something sharper. More targeted. The shift wasn't happening in laboratories, but in forests, oceans, and deserts, far from cities, far from headlines. It spread quietly, organically, and most dangerously of all, intelligently. And if nature was learning, the next question became terrifyingly clear. Learning what? By 2023, the anomalies were no longer isolated. In northern Sweden, dozens of livestock were killed overnight, not by wolves, but by moose. Solitary, usually shy, plant-eating moose. Necropsies showed precision trauma to vital organs, not random thrashing. Near Vancouver, A pack of coyotes began leading hikers off-trail consistently toward unstable ground. In South Africa, a pride of lions avoided park cameras for 3 straight months, despite expanded surveillance grids. The common thread? Intentional evasion, targeted action, and timing. Reports flooded in from 12 countries. Predators waiting for periods of low human activity. Attacks clustered during satellite blind spots. Entire species shifting their behavior in nonlinear ways, breaking from generations of instinct, acting outside evolutionary norms. Data scientists analyzing global incident maps noticed something terrifying. The pattern wasn't random. It was global, coordinated. Researchers at Kyoto University compared behavioral changes across 47 species from 6 continents. The results showed a 38% increase in aggressive, coordinated animal actions since 2018, most of which occurred in areas of high human encroachment. A leaked internal memo from a European conservation agency described it bluntly. If these were humans, we'd call it organized resistance. The public never saw that report. It was buried, reframed, then forgotten. But for those tracking the pattern, one fact became undeniable. This isn't about animal survival anymore. It's something else, something strategic. And if we are no longer at the top of the chain, what comes next? In 2024, an independent research group in Finland discovered something that would rewrite everything we thought we knew. Using a combination of bioacoustic mapping and AI-driven pattern recognition, they analyzed how wild animals responded to specific human sounds, vehicle engines, power generators, even speech. The result? Across dozens of species, the response wasn't fear, it was memory. Wolves avoiding areas where hunting rifles were used months before. Birds mimicking the alarm tones of deforestation machines before they arrived. Insect colonies migrating preemptively away from noise frequencies tied to pesticide drones. The data didn't suggest random adaptation. It suggested recognition, anticipation. Some called it environmental memory. Others went further. A controversial paper published in early 2025 proposed a radical idea, collective interspecies intelligence. Not telepathy or sci-fi level consciousness, but a biologically plausible network of shared signals, environmental markers, and learned behaviors spread across ecosystems. In short, animals may not be evolving individually, but together. A distributed intelligence system shaped by trauma, pressure, and observation. Imagine every hunted wolf, every dying coral reef, every bird displaced by glass towers, learning something, and passing that knowledge on, not genetically, but behaviorally. It changes the question completely. Not, why are animals attacking us? But, what have we taught them, and how far will they go? We thought we were watching nature. But what if quietly, collectively, it was studying us all along? And now, it remembers. Today, behind closed doors and carefully worded publications, science is scrambling to catch up. Top ecology labs, from MIT to Berlin to Tokyo, are deploying high-frequency acoustic arrays, biomonitoring drones, and machine learning algorithms to track what they now call behavioral inflection points. These are moments when an animal's actions deviate sharply from known instinctual patterns. And the findings? They're not consistent, but they are spreading. At Stanford University, researchers recently documented coordinated nesting patterns between species that normally compete, crows and hawks building within meters of each other, sharing alert calls during human approach. In the Pacific Northwest, motion-sensing networks picked up synchronized night movements across deer, foxes, and even raccoons, forming pathways that avoided roads, cameras, and noise zones. These aren't isolated glitches. AI systems are now flagging animal behavior with terms typically reserved for cyber attacks: clustering, subversion, evasion. Governments are paying attention, too. Quietly. Several defense agencies have contracted wildlife data from private conservation groups, without explanation. In leaked documents, some of these patterns are referred to not as anomalies, but as tactical behaviors. Publicly, science walks a tightrope. Most journals avoid terms like collective adaptation or emergent intelligence. But off the record, researchers admit we may be witnessing a planetary-scale shift in non-human cognition. And the biggest problem? We built all our models assuming nature would never change the rules. But now it has. Some believe this is nature's immune response. A few fringe ecologists argue that Earth, as a self-regulating system, What some call the Gaia hypothesis has finally activated a defense mechanism that, after centuries of industrial poisoning, deforestation, and mass extinction, the biosphere has begun to push back. Not with storms or plagues, but with its most adaptable agents, animals. Conscious or not, they've become the antibodies. And we, the infection. Others take a colder, data-driven view. They suggest this is the inevitable result of rapid cognitive adaptation forced by ecological trauma. In other words, animals didn't change because they wanted to, but because we left them no choice. Their world shrank. Their food vanished. Their instincts failed. So something new emerged. But there's a darker theory. Whispered, not published. A few military analysts have noted how these behavioral shifts mimic asymmetric warfare. Ambushes, diversions, surveillance evasion. Patterns known from insurgencies, not ecosystems. If animals are evolving tactically, are we sure they're doing it alone? Some claim deep learning algorithms, trained on environmental control systems, may have unknowingly fed strategic behavior into the wild. Others blame secret biolabs, ecological weapons gone wrong, or even rogue AI programs using wildlife as proxies. But regardless of the theory, one truth remains. We pushed the planet for too long without consequence. And now, the consequence may be learning, adapting, organizing. Progress always demands a price. The only question left is, who pays it first? The breaking point came quietly, then all at once. In early 2026, a coordinated blackout swept across northern India, southern China, and parts of Southeast Asia. The cause? Sabotaged infrastructure, transmission lines torn down by coordinated bird flocks, substation cables chewed through simultaneously across hundreds of kilometers. Initially blamed on technical failure, until surveillance footage showed synchronized activity. Hours later, a freight train carrying agricultural chemicals derailed in Brazil after a herd of capybaras triggered a controlled landslide. These weren't isolated disasters. They were tactical strikes. And for the first time, governments began to panic publicly. Markets crashed. Orders tightened. Emergency declarations spread. But it was already too late. In coastal towns, fishing communities reported total absence of marine life. Oceans emptied overnight. In national parks, wolves and bears moved in packs with calculated precision, avoiding traps and ambushing patrols. Farmers in Europe abandoned entire regions after months of relentless sabotage, cut fences, destroyed crops, nighttime raids. The United Nations convened a special ecological emergency summit, where, for the first time, the term non-human agency was spoken on record. The reaction? Silence. Across the globe, humanity began to grasp the scale. We hadn't created a new species. We had awakened an intelligence already here, distributed, patient, unforgiving. Not artificial, but entirely natural. And far older than us. The reign of Homo sapiens wasn't ended by war or famine, but by the quiet uprising of everything we never thought could organize. And now, the planet isn't ours anymore. In the aftermath, humanity stood at a crossroads, not of technology or territory, but of identity. For centuries, we saw ourselves as separate from nature, above it, smarter, more evolved. We measured intelligence by language, by tools, by domination. But we never considered the possibility that nature had its own form of intelligence, patient, collective, invisible to the human eye, until it wasn't. Now we face a choice. Do we attempt to fight back, reassert control, dominate once more? Or do we accept a truth we never wanted to hear? That we are not rulers, but participants. That our survival may no longer depend on dominance, but on humility. Some nations proposed building walled sanctuaries, sterile cities, fully automated zones free of wildlife. But others listened. In Norway, entire industries were shut down voluntarily to give ecosystems space to heal. In South America, scientists began working with wildlife signals to coordinate land use, observing rather than intervening. The question isn't whether we can adapt. It's whether we're willing to. Because the world we once controlled is gone. And in its place is a system that remembers every scar we left behind. The final dilemma is simple, but unforgiving. Do we learn to live with intelligence we can't dominate? Or do we vanish as just another failed species, out-evolved by the very planet that raised us? Remember how this began. We thought it was just noise, anomalies, curiosities, things science couldn't explain yet. But now you know. The silence in the jungle, the coordination in the shadows, the memory hiding behind their eyes. It wasn't fiction. It was a signal, and we ignored it. I'm not a storyteller. I'm someone who's seen the data. Someone who watched patterns turn into warnings, and warnings turn into losses. And I'll be honest with you. What scares me the most isn't that nature might be evolving against us. It's that we might deserve it. Think about it. For decades, we called it progress. When forests burned for cities, when oceans emptied for profit, when species vanished like background noise. We believed nature was silent. But maybe it was just listening. And now, it speaks. Not with words, but with patterns, with precision, with consequence. So let me ask you, if this is nature fighting back, do you think we've done enough to make peace? Or are we simply hoping it shows more mercy than we ever did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if the planet stopped forgiving? And if this is only the beginning, what do you think happens next? Hit like. Share this with someone who still believes we're in control. And ask them, when was the last time you looked at an animal and wondered what it saw when it looked back?